Welcome to Triangle BNI. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Oak City Tech can help you cut through the noise in social media, folks. If you're on social media, you know everybody's out there saying everything, and you got to find something that will set you apart. Folks at Oak City Tech can help you do that. Whether it's a web design, social media, SEO, anything like that, they can help you do that. Go to oakcitytech.com. Tell them we said hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning. Each week, we bring you a small business success story on Triangle BNI. If you're not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Each week, there are approximately 30 chapters, almost 600 members meeting. And the only thing we're interested in doing is helping our fellow members grow their business. And our small business success story this week is Rod Chesnutt with U.S. Health Advisors. Rod, how are you today?
I'm doing terrific. Thanks so much for asking, Mike.
Glad to have you on the show. The CPA busy season just ended, and your busy season is about to pick up with open enrollment, isn't it?
Well, it's one of several busy seasons for us at U.S. Health since we're a private company. But for health insurance across the board, yes, this is it. November 1 kicks in, and usually it goes to about the first or second week of December.
So let's talk about what this means for folks who are looking for health insurance. They have options. I know they can go into the Affordable Care Act. There's all kind of things you can help educate us on. But I know that you guys are always looking for folks that need either new insurance, supplemental insurance, because a lot of times you can beat the prices that are out there in the market, correct?
That's true. Well, if we compare apples to apples, uh, for a marketplace plan, we usually run about 30 to 50% less per month than someone paying full price on the marketplace. Uh, the company I work for, I think of it more of in terms of the value that we're able to present to people and another perspective, another option that allows them to look at what their own needs are and be able to construct something that's going to fit them. What we usually find with health insurance is there's a lot of options out there. The reason for that is there's a lot of people out there with a lot of different needs. So yes, that's in answer to your first question, we're a little less expensive on average than the standard marketplace plan.
For people that are getting insurance through the marketplace, is this the only time each year they can change their carriers?
This is the primary time. The reason I say that is because there are some exceptions to the rule. Uh, Marketplace plans are accessible if there's a change in life circumstances. And there's been a lot of changes to life circumstances this year. Some people may have noticed that. Uh, so some of those are a change of residence, particularly from one state to another state within the last 60 days, change of position with the job or losing their insurance in the last 60 days. So when there's a life experience, there are other options because the insurance coverage may or may not change. And I say that because we use PPOs, which are our provider networks, and moving from one place to another may change the options for doctors and those types of things. So that's why this time of the year, it's been compressed a little bit from the original uh, version of the ACA. That's why this time of the year, it compacts everything in so everybody can focus in on healthcare, look at what their options are, and be able to make some informed decisions about what works for them.
Has COVID changed in any way the products or the services people can get access to?
Not really. The industry has done a pretty good job of adapting what we have to work for COVID. Um, the biggest thing was, okay, the testing, what happens with that? The challenge was how do we deal with COVID as far as is it a pre-existing condition or not. One of the things that I think is really great about our company is up until this year, we, as a private company, you're probably aware that most private policies are what we call underwritten policies based on how how good the individual's health is or a family's health is. We now have access to a guaranteed issue policy that outside of open enrollment we can provide for people also. That's one of those things you adapt to the needs of the population, and good insurance companies look at what the needs are and adapt the products to that. Did that answer your question?
It did. For
Okay.
the folks in the marketplace, let's say they make a decision by November 5th. Can they still call US Health or one of your competitors to add to things or change anything, or once they're in, they're in?
Okay, that's more encompassing than you may suspect. Um,
I thought these were easy questions, Rod. Come on.
well, you're giving me an opportunity to talk ad nauseum, if that's the intent. Okay, so if someone signs up for health coverage during open enrollment, that coverage kicks in January 1st. All right. Now, if they sign up with us, their insurance can kick in immediately upon approval. So that's a slight difference. The other thing that's slightly different and goes back to your question, my colleagues in US Health or any private insurance company or short term insurance, we're in a position to be able to offer coverage year round. So there are other opportunities for people to look at what we have and say, is this something I want to supplement my marketplace plan? Is this something that I want to replace my marketplace plan? Ideally, the marketplace, the government, the intent is for people to sign up for the marketplace plan and stay with it for a year. And then at this time next year, evaluate everything and see where they are. However, life changes as we go through a year. So one of the things that I notice is March and April, I usually have an uptick as people realize, okay, my budget isn't working with what I'm paying. And so they're having to make second decisions. Now, part of this happens, Mike, because people, when they made the decision about the marketplace, they may not have talked to a real life person. And I can't emphasize enough, regardless of who you're looking at in terms of products or companies, it is important to talk to a real person, a real agent, and be able to find someone that's going to talk with the client honestly about several questions. The first question is, what are your priorities? Is it financial security, or is it being able to keep low monthly premiums? Because the thing about health insurance is you frequently get what you pay for. If you're not paying very much, you might not be getting very much coverage. So a good insurance agent will talk a client or a potential client through those options, and they won't lock into a particular product and try to sell a product. They're going to try to find a match for that individual or that family or that small business.
Gotcha.
So
Now, Rod and I are in the same BNI chapter. We're in RD18. We meet Thursdays at noon. When we get back to meeting in person, it's at the Hibernian Pub on Falls, but right now all of BNI is in Zoom. I know you have a personal, passionate reason that got you into this health advisor world, didn't it?
well, that's right. I had a heart attack 3 years ago, and the health insurance, if it hadn't been for health insurance, I would have been in big trouble. It's not something I was anticipating. I was in good health. So seeing how that made such a huge difference in my life, my lifestyle, it I think you asked a question earlier to someone else about can we afford not to have health coverage? That's a great question. And one of the ways I look at it is what is our single biggest asset? And it's ourselves. It doesn't matter what your business is, your single business, biggest asset is you. And if we're not taking care of us, and we're not doing the things to take care of our families in case us no longer exists, then we are removing our biggest asset from taking care of our business and our families. And our health is unpredictable. We can try very hard to maintain it, but because the health is unpredictable, it forces us into decisions. And too frequently, I've had people say, I don't need to spend the money on monthly premiums. I'll just save the money. And then they find out how much the doctor bill is.
And with insurance, we don't need it till we need it, right?
Well, that's the whole point of insurance. That's why it's called insurance, isn't it? The best kind of insurance is the insurance you don't need.
Yep. I've got like most people, when it comes to auto insurance, probably maybe have filed one claim,
Right.
and yet they've been paying 15, 18 years. But you're right. The one time you rear end a car in rush hour traffic with no insurance and you're out, not only your damages, but the person you hit.
Right.
So I'm with you on that. So
And isn't it funny how we treat automobile insurance differently than health insurance? The idea was to get there where it's required to have health insurance, just like it's required to have auto insurance.
yes.
But it doesn't matter. We all know there's people out there without auto insurance, which is why we now have insurance for people that don't have insurance.
Going back, let's talk a little bit more about what you went through with the heart attack.
Okay.
How long before you started feeling almost like you after you had the heart attack?
That was a process. Now, I guess about 3 months. However, I want to say by the time I was feeling like me, I actually was feeling better than me. I just didn't realize me wasn't feeling that good. So I'm in the best shape now I've ever been in, probably.
So what kind of changes did you have to make once you got home from the hospital, getting some energy back, starting to feel better?
Uh, I remember, Mike, you'll enjoy this. I remember the first time I could walk to the end of the driveway. I was so excited. And I have a Shiba Inu who was not excited about the fact that I couldn't take her for walks anymore. And she would look at me and say, "What's this all about? You're being lazy." Through the rehab process, and I had a choice. I, I had a uh, cardiologist that gave me a choice between having a machine hooked up to me or go through a process of medication and rehab and the physical therapy to basically get my heart restarted because 1/3 of my heart just did not function. Period. It was dead, and the other 2/3. The reason I had the heart attack was the other 2/3 just got tired of working that hard. Uh, so what I did, the physical therapy was going twice a week, but also doing it outside. Uh, it's caring enough for your loved ones that you're not going to leave them in a position that you didn't promise when you married them. So I walk a lot. I started walking a lot, and I still will put in about 8 to 10 miles a day.
Wow.
A day. That's my passion. That's what I try to do on average through the month because you can't. No matter what happens, there's stuff like rain and stuff. I walk in the rain. My community knows I walk in the rain.
There you go.
I'm not so.
We are here with Rod Chesnutt, U.S. Health Advisors. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Folks, you need a website. It all starts with that because if the world can't find you, you may have the best product or service ever, but it won't do you much good if people can't find you. So you need to start with a website, even if it's not high end and has 100 bells and whistles. Just get something out there that you can start referring people to. So go to oakcitytech.com. I know they can help you with that. Rod, I feel for you on managing the expectations of your family members because a couple of years ago, I got a pacemaker. And the issues I had prior to my pacemaker, I would pass out. I was diagnosed with syncope, so I would pass out. And that just worried my wife, Becky, to no end. So I know the feeling of now that I have a pacemaker, I've not passed out and it's put her mind at ease. So I know your wife, Jennifer, and your family members were feeling a lot better once you kind of got the reboot, shall we say.
Yeah, you're right. And I was aware that you had the pacemaker, and I didn't realize that what was happening prior to getting that. But again, that's where the health insurance kicked in for me. It helped the hospital bills. If I had to pay full price at hospital bills, you were probably the same way. I would still be in debt. But because of that, because I was in a position to plan and be able to do things when the unplanned happened, then that's put us on a better path. In fact, thankfully, we're in Raleigh now. So,
And we're glad you're here. I
uh,
know what the price was on my pacemaker. Can't imagine what that price was for a heart attack.
well, I don't make that much. I never made that much money in a year. So,
mean, I barely did. Yeah.
yeah, but you did ask how long did it take? And I would say I had the heart attack in September, and it really was January before I could go out and comfortably walk. I'm trying to think. The reason I'm making a face, I don't know if it's because I felt comfortable walking or my wife felt comfortable with me walking
Yep.
that long without her knowing where I was.
Now, who gave you the most, you better do this or else advice? And who did you listen to the most as you were recovering?
Well, it may be my wife. Um, she didn't have to. She didn't have to get. I usually don't have to be told something more than once or twice to get it. And for me, the whole idea of having a machine hooked up to me, I just I I did not want to live an abnormal life. That's just not something I've been bred to do. So um, that's a long history. So I knew what needed to be done. My wife was the one. I get up and the pills are laid out for the next 2 weeks, all done, and medication. Yeah, she's really on top of that. She didn't have to push me to do the exercise component, partly because she still does. She's really big into exercise. She's actually a certified PIO instructor and that type of thing. So it actually creates some opportunities for us to do some things together that we hadn't previously done. So I just looked at it as an opportunity.
There you go. How many quality time? I'm with you on that. How many pills you take a day?
Well, I'm down to 4. um, I and one of those is an aspirin. So I don't feel too bad about that.
How many were you taking when you first got home?
I was taking 12, 6 in the morning, 6 in the evening. So that's that gold medal when you come home from the cardiologist and he says, okay, for instance, this just happened about 4 or 5 months ago. Went to the cardiologist, came back, said, guess what? I only have to take pills in the morning and I only have to take 4 pills. And it's yes.
That's a win, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So you find your victories where they come.
Now, I always laugh with my family that my cardiologist put down a nice down payment on a new boat with my pacemaker. Yours probably put a down payment on a nice house with a heart attack.
Well, if he did, he was really nice about it. He never. I've been fortunate, and my cardiologist up here is terrific. I couldn't have been more fortunate to hook up with someone. I'm with UNC Healthcare, and they're I found them to be terrific.
We mentioned your wife Jennifer a couple times. I always like to ask people on the show, how did you meet your spouse? And do you both tell the story the same way?
Well, my wife rarely tells stories. She listens to me and she will insert an improvement or a correction if it needs to happen.
Fair enough.
But we were both in band, and we met at Florida State University. And we met because of Florida State playing in Miami, and I was a graduate assistant overseeing one of the marching chiefs. That's what we call the marching band there. And I was in charge of one bus, which at that time was tubas and euphoniums, and she was the captain of the color guard
At Florida State.
at Florida State.
Gotcha.
She was on a different bus. However, and this is a long story, so I'll skip this story to get to the story you asked about. Because of this story, we ended up being on the same bus. So, because a whole lot of events happened, so the next away trip, I believe it was Georgia Tech. We were playing Georgia Tech up in Atlanta. So I find myself sitting next to this cute blonde, and because she's the flag captain, so I'm sitting on the front seat because I have to keep track of everything. She has to come up to the front seat so she can keep track of all of her girls. So one thing led to another. We started talking. Then we had the band banquet, and I found out that from one of her co-captains that she might like to go out with me. So we went to band banquet together. Then we started doing other things together. Uh, Her mom and dad said while I was in grad school, I also delivered newspapers in the mornings to help ends meet, even though I had an assistantship. She, a couple mornings, went with me.
Ooh,
And her
that's true
mom and
love
dad
right
said, we
there.
knew she was serious about it because Jennifer doesn't get up early in the morning. And I said, well, she slept a lot of the way around the route, but that's when it started. So we had a long engagement, and here we are.
So did you have any of that good facial hair that you have now back then?
No, no. Last time I had facial hair, Mike, was when I was an undergrad in college, and everybody had facial hair then. We're
No,
talking about we're
yeah,
talking
it
about
was
the 70s. So
my mustache was horrible back then. So yeah.
actually, my mustache was pretty good. It was the beard that was horrible. So it wasn't the beard part didn't last very long. I quickly shaved it down to the goatee,
Mhm.
and then I found this irritating when playing the trombone. So I shaved this off. So I had the mustache. So
Right.
yeah,
So let's go back to the bus ride here. You said, what is a euphonium?
a euphonium. Okay, that's a small version of a tuba.
I've
Uh,
never heard of that.
yeah, it's they are related to the concert tuba. Originate in Central Europe. They're a standard part of the band today. Many people think of it's similar to the baritone horn. The
Not helping,
difference.
but keep talking.
Okay, now this is where you need to stop me, Mike, because I'll head off on a tangent and give
Then
you
let's
information you could care less about. The
so let's
difference
stop
between,
right here. Yes. Okay. So
but
let's
it's a
move.
tenor voice brass instrument in
Okay.
the band, and it's a carryover from the brass bands that you see in Europe.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So I'd never heard that word. I learned something today, so I always enjoy that.
All right, we can call it a day.
Now, really. Now you have first of all, let's get back to, I did not do an official introduction for you that you're a doctor.
I do have my PhD, as
I
does
should
my
have,
wife.
I know, I should have mentioned that. So what is yours in?
I have a PhD in education with a focus in music.
And Jennifer's?
Jennifer's is okay. It has to do with mathematical modeling, but it deals with engineering. So it's
Right.
actually it's called biometrical engineering.
Okay. Right. Now, we were talking before we came on. I was asking you, because I think you probably told me before what Jennifer did. I just didn't remember. It's interesting that you're the creative side and she's the mathematical, linear, breaking down projects, doing connecting things and all that. And here you are, a music guy and everything. So you two probably see things a little different, which probably leads to a pretty cool conversation.
Um, Sometimes it does. Sometimes it leads to no conversation. um, but we do have different ways of expressing ourselves. So sometimes we have to elaborate on what did you mean by that. But we say that, but she's very creative too. When she would write routines and she creates routines, and she has an affinity for music. You should hear her work out. Notice I didn't say you should see her work out.
Caught that. Yep.
You should hear her work out. Boy, when she starts getting into the music, really let it rip. She can. I mean, she's got a good voice. So, and I can be pretty analytical myself, which that component of working with health insurance actually plays well together. I think that's for what we both do. We kind of have to do that. We have to bring the opposite part of us into the room so that we do something that's more comprehensive.
When she was designing, did she design the routines back in college for the
Yes,
flag troop?
yes.
Did she do little did she do drawings so it looked like a math problem on there so everybody knew where
Oh,
they're supposed to be and where?
well, she would do count count sheets.
Okay.
So uh, she would put counts plus counts descriptor here. So it's like word problems. Think of it. Think of word problems. I know, probably your favorite thing to do when you were in school.
I didn't mind that. I just didn't like anything that had to do with science. I just never got into that. I enjoyed word problems. I like those things, but just depending on the subject matter.
Right.
But okay, so start again. She did the count and you used another word or another phrase.
Um, she did count sheets, and so
Yep.
she'd do a count here and then a descriptor.
What's that? Okay, what do you mean?
So she'd do counts. You see something, so she'd have a little shortcut, like a something that meant something to her. That's an abbreviation of a whole bunch of words
Okay.
that looks kind of like a math equation.
Oh, so we'll call it Jennifer shorthand.
That's a good way of doing it,
Excellent.
because she would have to teach them the shorthand, and then they'd see the sheet and go, oh, I know what that is.
Excellent. Okay. I'm on board now. Keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So then she'd do a descriptor out in case someone couldn't figure out what they were supposed to do.
That would be
Then
people
at
like
the end of the
me.
day, what she would do is, okay, do it like this. Do it like this. This is what we. So yeah, she's very very good at that.
What were some of the road trips you guys took with the band?
Trips to Clemson,
Right.
Miami, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame. Uh, we were reminded that this fall, even though we got killed by Notre Dame, of course, everybody talks about the game of the century. We were there.
Oh, yeah.
I stood next to O.J. Simpson for almost the whole game. At that time, it was okay.
Well, it's funny because you and I are roughly the same age, and I try to explain to younger people today that OJ in his day was as big a celebrity in the United States as there was.
Oh, he was a rock star.
Yes.
I mean, literally, you, if we'd had cell phones back then doing selfies, I mean,
Oh, millions of them, yeah. Because
yeah,
he was on Monday Night Football. He was soon to become a Hall of Famer. He was on the Avis commercials, and he was in some movies. He j you
yeah,
again, in his time, I don't think there was anybody bigger.
because he was so personable. He was just
Yes.
bigger in life when you stood next to him, and he would talk to anybody. At least in my experience, because he was talking to all. And at Notre Dame, the bands are down on the field, yet right up to the sidelines. So he had to go through the band every time he wanted to go to the other side of the field. The idea of having two sideline reporters, he was the sideline reporter
Oh,
at
yeah.
that time. So
We are here with Rod Chesnutt, U.S. Health Advisors. Rod is in RD18 for BNI. They meet Thursdays at lunch. If you ever have a Thursday at lunch, we can send you the Zoom link. Come join us. You'll see what kind of good crowd we have. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Folks, you need a mailing list. So you got a bunch of clients. How are you talking to them? You can't assume they're going to stay with you forever, as Rod will agree. You got to do a little bit of customer service. Sometimes it helps to have a mailing list, send out some tips, some seasonal things, some new timings like open enrollment, things like that that are going on. So go to oakcitytech.com. They'll help you get that set up. All right, Rod, I found out doing a little research on you. I tactfully stalk people. If I got this right, your dad was a doctor.
he was. My dad had, earned his PhD, basically animal husbandry, dealt with genetics in cattle.
Okay, then the obvious next question is where in the world did you get a music gene from?
My mom,
Okay. Moms, you
my
can always
mom,
count on moms. Yep.
my mom, her bachelor's degree she had a double degree. She had a double bachelor's. She got a degree in music and a degree in biology.
Dang, that's a dual threat right there.
And she met my dad while they were doing she was a research associate at Oak Ridge National Laboratories, and my dad was doing research at Oak Ridge National Laboratories. And this is back in the 50s when research there was serious stuff. And at that time, everything was dealing with radiation, and that's where they met each other. So,
Having gone to school at the University of Tennessee, which Oak Ridge is right outside of Knoxville, many stories about what went on there.
well, ironically, my dad went to the University of
I
Tennessee.
know. But I don't know if the root or just the water cooler talk or anything like that is still going on. But back in the day, there was a lot of double secret stuff going on at Oak Ridge.
Well, nobody knew Oak Ridge even existed. At one point in time, it's a town similar to Los Alamos that the government created. They built and moved everybody there, and nobody knew about it until after World War II. So
Yeah,
you're
it's
right.
people should read stories on it because there was a ton of R&D and everything going on there, just trying to figure out what in the world's going on in the world.
Well, one of those things of letting something loose and to say, okay, now we've done this. Let's figure out what we've done. So in fact, that's why my dad left that and he went into teaching at that point because he was on the platform and his badge turned black, which that's a bad thing
Yep.
when and he said, I'm putting myself at risk here. Teaching sounds like a much better path for myself and my future family than doing this. So
Where did he end up teaching?
he taught biology.
Where did he do that?
Oh, well, we moved around quite a bit. He taught at Cal Berkeley for a little bit. He taught at Campbellsville University. He was the first professor hired at what is now Charleston Southern University. It was Baptist College at Charleston there at that time. So he taught at several places. And I don't know if I told you this, but he and my mom later on were foreign missionaries.
Wow.
They spent 4 years in Kenya. So my youngest brother actually grew up in Kenya.
Wait, you had to have been there, right?
No, because I said my youngest brother.
Okay. I know you have
I
siblings.
was already out, and I was already out teaching myself at that time.
Oh, so younger brother is an oops baby.
Mama called it a blessing.
There you go. Most days, I'm sure she did. Yeah.
So yeah, he's
Wow.
16 years younger than I am.
Holy cow. So where are you in the pecking order?
I'm the oldest.
All right. And then what are the ages of every or the age differences for everybody?
Well, I have a sister that's a year younger. I have a brother that's 6 years younger, and then there's uh, my youngest brother who's 16 years younger.
And would you consider yourself a good big brother?
No,
Me neither.
not if you ask my siblings. That's a good. I don't know. I'd like to think I am, but one of the things that was different between myself and my siblings is they all stayed basically in the area. They all still live in Tennessee, and I've traveled around a lot and seen a lot. And uh, I think part of that goes back to my mom. She understood what that was like, and if you ask my my siblings, they would say, "Yeah, she thought you were special, and we think you're special too, but it's a different kind of special."
My sister could I'm the middle of three, so my sister, even to this day, continues to remind me that I'm mom's favorite, which I totally agree with, but not growing up, yeah, because the other two were a pain in the ass. My older sister and younger brother just kept fighting my mom on everything. And after a couple years of watching this, it's like, man, just keep your mouth shut and I can just come and go as I never had a curfew or anything.
Well, and it was a little different for me because being the oldest, and we always had a farm because my dad had grown up. My grandfather was a tenant farmer, so when my dad, this idea of owning a farm has always been in our family because it goes way back. He, uh, I was always out working with him on weekends, or he found jobs for me to do that were outside. So Mama didn't really get to see me that much like she did the rest of my siblings. So she dealt with them growing up, and I kind of came in uh, fully formed after what my dad had done. So
Now,
he
my
gave
younger,
course corrections.
there you go. Yeah. Oh, course corrections are, yes, a wonderful thing, even if you don't realize it at the time, right? My younger brother, we're barely a year and a half, well, a little more than a year and a half apart. I can't imagine what it's like to have a brother. Your youngest then is what, nine? How many years
16.
difference? 16. What kind of relationship did you got? When did you first start having any kind of relationship?
Actually, fairly recently, because when my mom passed away, that opened up some opportunities. But because when I went to college and then I went to teach at the same time he went to Kenya. So my youngest brother really didn't see me except I came home from college every now and then. And at that time, went out on dates. So as far as he was concerned, I was this, he didn't know me very much at all.
You're like
However,
an uncle, right? May as well have been an uncle of his.
might as well,
Yeah.
in a way that probably more so than you think. So when my mom passed away a couple of years ago, and his two daughters got married, it opened up some opportunities for us to have conversations, commiserate. In some ways, probably we're closer. The two of us are closer than I am with the other siblings, just because we found that we actually have more in common than the rest. And again, we're completely different, but we find more comfort, more comfortable places to be when we're talking. So that's
And this further supports my theory of moms being the greatest people on the planet. So even at her funeral, she's helping her boys.
and she would agree with you.
Oh, they're moms are they well, first of all, they marry our kind. So thank you, women, for even wanting to hang out with us. But they have the babies, they put up with all the crap, they get dumped on. Everybody's like, they always put themselves last. Everybody always eats before mom, everybody gets stuff before mom. So to all the moms out there, there is no stronger group of people on the
Oh,
planet anywhere than mom.
absolutely. And my mom was one of those little ladies. She was 4 foot 11 and weighed 100 pounds maybe. In fact, if she got over 100 pounds, she thought she was heavy. And my dad was over 6 feet. So you can imagine the disparity between the two of them just walking into the room. And he was 6 foot, about 180. So he was rather muscular, and she was very petite. And as she got older, and we lost my dad, then she transitioned to the little old lady, and she played that to perfection. She could have written a book on being the little old lady.
Now, what does that mean?
She knew exactly when to push the button that she needed help, and she knew exactly when to push the button as you were going to get my opinion, and you're not going to be upset about it. And you couldn't be upset about it because it's this little old lady who's telling you stuff, and you're going, I can't say anything. So she always knew when she was right, which was pretty much all the time.
Yeah, you look back on that, and I found when I was Googling you the other day, I found the write up for her funeral service. And the kids did good, gave them a mess of grandkids. Well done by the family. And the reason why moms are so cool is because they turn into grandmothers. And the best stories I've found of people growing up are a grandmother story, sometimes a grandfather story, but usually the grandma stories are the best.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, uh, for me, probably, I think of stories about my grandpa before I think of
Mhm.
stories about of course, my mom's parents. My mom had a very similar family in that she was, I think, 18, 19 years younger than her oldest sister. So she was a blessing also. So she had dealt with the same thing. So she was familiar with that. But that also meant that my grandparents on her side, I never experienced that. But my grandpa, there was a love-hate affair between my grandpa and my mom, and it had to do with food because my parents were very strict about what we ate and how we ate. And my grandpa was very much an advocate that grandparents can feed their grandchildren anything they want as long as mama doesn't find out.
Well, and that's the key because and most people watching the show know that my grandson Oliver, who by the way is 2 years, 2 months, and 30 days today, but who's counting? And I'm trying to learn that fine line. I won't mess with the rules of the house. If they tell them this is bedtime or this is nap time, I'm not messing with that. But he and I are slowly starting to explore that range of breakfast because when I'm usually the first one up and then Oliver's right after me, and I'll send everybody back to bed and he and I'll have breakfast. And we're slowly working on, what's edible we can have, but usually may not have it for breakfast.
No, I don't. Your history probably remembers back when Bill Cosby was a good guy,
Oh, that was the best. Yeah.
and he talked about chocolate cake for
Yep.
breakfast.
Yep.
That that just popped in my head as you're telling that story. I'm thinking, yeah, I wonder if Oliver's had chocolate cake yet.
And go figure. Today we're talking about OJ and Cosby. Folks, read nothing into that. We're not condoning anything. It was
This
done,
means we're old.
but right. But in their moment in time, they were massive stars. And Bill Cosby, if you'll Google, I'm sure a skit will come up talking about why he fed the kids chocolate cake for breakfast. And the conversation he had to defend it to his wife. It's hysterical.
Yeah.
It's funny stuff. Yes. So Oliver, so I get where your grandfather came from.
Oh yeah. Now his territory was the pickup truck and the barn. Once we got in the truck, all bets were off because, and we loved riding with him in that pickup truck because that meant we were definitely going to get either Tootsie Rolls or Mounds or
Nice.
bad things
As
were going to happen.
well, and in fairness, the really, I won't say the really good grandmothers, but a lot of grandmothers would always have a piece of candy in their purse. Could always count on, at
Yeah,
least with
yeah.
me, could always, back when women carried purses on a very regular basis.
And grandma always had sweets. And
Oh,
actually, all of our aunts did too, because our aunts were so significantly older than my mom that they were like grandparents. So when we did our summer trips to go see all the relatives, that was probably that we probably weighed more when we finished the trip than when we started.
oh yeah, those, like I said, the grandmother stories are the best stories. But yeah, so Oliver and I'm trying to figure out where I can, give him stuff for breakfast that he may not be allowed to have,
Right,
which
right.
is fun. So
And he appreciates you for that.
he does. That's why I send it's one of the reasons why I send everybody back to bed so there are no witnesses, because but he's starting to cough up things now. His English is getting pretty good.
Oh,
So
so he can tell on you now.
yeah, so we need to start working on that. I got to find a way to say, now don't tell your mother. Need to be able to say without saying don't tell your mother, don't tell your
Don't
mother.
tell your mother, because otherwise he'll say, "Well,
Yeah,
Grandpa told me not to tell you this, but
yeah, I know. So, out of love, he wants to tell a good story because he had potato chips for breakfast, I'm sure. So we are here with Rod Chesnutt, U.S. Health Advisor. Rod's in BNI Group RD18, meets Thursdays at noon. If you ever want to join his group, and which is also my group, and meet some of the good people we have in there, please send us a note. You can send me a note at openmictalk@gmail.com. If you need a Zoom link, we'd love to have you there. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Social media folks, you might like hanging out on Facebook, but do you know how to post on Facebook to help your business if you have one, or anybody you know? That's what the folks at Oak City Tech can do. Go to oakcitytech.com, tell them what you're looking for, and they will be able to help you. Now, Rod, I always like when I have firsts on the show, and I think you qualify for at least one of these. Well, two of these. You've had two CDs that have been nominated for Grammy Awards.
I have.
We'll
I
get to that in a second. You are also, according to your bio, you are still a Grammy voter.
I still am for a little while anyway. That's a little bit of a challenge to stay up on it anymore.
How did that start? How does one become a Grammy voter?
Well, the now that starts fairly easy. When I say it's fairly easy, you have to be nominated for a Grammy,
Understood.
and that qualifies you to vote for a Grammy. I said it's difficult to stay up on it. You're allowed. What I wish I had a ballot. If you could see how extensive the ballot is, you'd be amazed. It's like a
Oh,
book.
yeah. Well, and they keep adding categories, and then they keep adding, instead of five, now it's eight people for each category, like the Academy Awards, because we got to give everybody a trophy. So let's not nominate five, let's nominate 10. It's like, no, there's only five good ones.
All right, and you're only allowed to vote. You're expected to vote for what you've listened to in the areas that you are most comfortable or most competent in. So, for instance, my categories that were classical music, classical large ensemble, classical soloist, classical producers. Uh, there's one more, but you can vote up to 10 categories. And the agreement is that you have to have listened to everything that has been available in those categories. And you should not vote unless you've listened to everything. Otherwise, you're making a biased vote. Not that it's unbiased, but the idea is to keep it above board and keep it as fair as possible.
Do they send you, or what do they send you of the nominees to listen to?
They send you a copy of the nominees. Then frequently, kind of like selling health insurance. Once you put your name out there and say you're interested in health insurance, and all of a sudden you've got 40 phone calls a day about health insurance. Once someone's been nominated, they start providing people, especially if it's their first time, they start providing everyone that are potential voters with links to their CDs, to their YouTube videos. So that starts consuming a little bit of time when they start doing that, which is why I like the way they restrict it. I would hate to vote across the board
Oh yeah.
because there's some music that I don't mind listening to good, but not everything that's nominated is necessarily good. So
Is it a help or a hindrance that the artists are, let's just say, trying to help you by sending you links and everything?
it helps when it's your category that you're voting in.
So
It's
you
a
like that
hindrance
in the
when it's
classic, yeah, in the classical world, you don't mind those. That helps
no,
you
I don't
make
mind.
better
I
decisions.
do it anyway. In fact,
Okay.
most of the time, I pretty much already know that's. But when I get rap
Yeah.
stuff that I don't listen to frequently, then and that's just an example. Not there's some really good. It's like health insurance. There's all good health insurance. It's just finding good fits. There's a lot of good genres of music, depending on what your life experiences are and what you like to listen to. So if it's something outside my life experiences, then and it starts hammering my email address, that can get pretty that it's the same thing. Like I said, it's just like getting hammered with health insurance agents.
How much, or what's the window of you being able to vote in? How much time they give you?
Never think about that. It's about a month to 6 weeks. So
And then how do you physically submit your votes?
it's a ballot that they send a hard ballot and you send it back.
Oh, okay. Right. And do you, when was the last time, when were your CDs nominated?
Let's see, uh, two. I have to find my CD. Let's see, uh, 20, yeah, 2015 and 2016.
If you no longer have a CD nominated, how long can you be a Grammy voter?
As long as you pay your dues,
Fair enough. Uh,
$100 a year.
do you see yourself continuing this for a while?
Um, no, I it means if I continue, other than the personal satisfaction of saying you're doing it, um, when as I get older, I tend to be a little bit more restrictive. I don't listen as broadly as I used to. Probably should continue, but in fairness to the process, I don't see myself continuing this over the long term.
Now, the fact that you have been an associate professor in college, did you have a CD in your brain one day that I'm gonna put something out?
No, that wasn't that wasn't on the agenda. It wasn't something I planned on. In fact, I didn't even now putting a CD out. That's something uh, that people in that particular music really want to do because uh, it's it's that contribution to the field. It's like writing a book. If or writing a book of poetry, if you're a poet, if you're a novelist, you want to write a novel. Some people have that one great novel in them. It's one of those things uh, that you and the ensemble and the people in the ensemble do for posterity's sake. The fact that it got nominated, that's usually whoever produced the CD submits it for approval, and then the Grammy committee approves it for nomination. So
What was your role in the CD?
I programmed it. put the music together, conducted the music, taught
Nice.
the music. So
And when did you get wind that this was even going to be submitted?
after it had already been done and we had the nomination.
Is that the best thing for you to find out afterwards?
Yeah, because that's one that I was, I don't know, I was paying it. I sometimes pay attention to the news and some of those weekend news shows, and they were doing a thing about patience. Said that that the fact that we are tracking towards being impatient, and impatience can actually shorten your life as much as eightfold. So yeah, I did the same thing. Whoa.
Mm.
So learning patience, and as if you don't have to, if you don't know about something, then that's one less thing you have to worry about.
What advice would you give if some folks have some younger kids or teenage years, something like that love music and want to find out if the music world in one form or another could be part of their life? What's a couple tips you might give them on how to kind of research that and try it out?
Okay, well, the first thing I would say is music will always be part of their lives if they choose to. And I would encourage parents to encourage the students because it uses a different part of the brain. So the components, the things they learn from music, that will continue with them regardless of what they do with music. Um, that it's not just it's not just a skill; it's part of who we are. It's part of our DNA as human beings. So what I encourage them to do is first talk to a music teacher and make sure, again, similar to health insurance, make sure it's someone that doesn't really have an agenda. They just want the best for the students so that they can find the best opportunities. What is it that the child likes to do? What do they enjoy doing in music? All right, well, let's find opportunities for them to grow in doing this and realize that it may not last. They may evolve into something else. Uh, Careers rather rarely stay static. I think both of us have lived that in that um, we adjust based on what our interests are, and having that outlet is really important. Even if they move away from it in their 20s after they go to college and they move into family life and that type of thing, we've discovered that for folks in their 50s and 60s, there is what the New Horizons movement across the country is for folks that want to rediscover or discover for the first time that music is an outlet for creativity and growth and expanding as a human being.
And the older I get, the more I realize the definition of the word change. To me, it just means new information. It's
Well,
not
that's
a
a good way of
bad
putting it.
thing,
Yeah.
just new information. You're like, oh, that sounds like fun. It doesn't matter if you're 28 or 58. If something gets your attention, check it out.
Well, one of the things that I appreciate is being able to have the opportunity to change. That's I consider that a blessing every day if I have the opportunity to learn something new. So
You with
that's
your
important.
pills and exercise, and me with my pacemaker, man, we're still ready to take on the world, aren't we? A couple old
There you
guys.
go. Watch out for these gray-haired, gray bearded guys, because
Yeah.
Hey,
As
Mike.
I tell
well,
people,
Hey, Mike.
don't let the gray hair fool you.
yeah.
Mike,
Yes.
I have a quick question that insurance wise.
Okay, go ahead.
Rod, I got aware from a friend of mine that I talked with this week that if you don't do it right or you don't do it on time or whatever, you get penalized when you are the Medicare thing, and you have to pay 10% more forever or something like that.
Okay. Um, Let me do a clarification on that. As far as health insurance is concerned, up until 2018, there was a penalty when we did our income taxes if we did not have health insurance. Trump did get rid of the penalty for not having
Oh,
health insurance.
okay.
That's why you see a higher percentage of people now without health insurance than we've had in, I think, 8 years. I'm not sure about that data point, but at one point that was absolutely correct. We've moved off of that. The the political thing about health insurance, I wish it wasn't political, but it is that we've tried we we've tried to make up something we didn't know anything about.
Mhm.
So the first year that the ACA plans were out, there were a lot of insurance companies that were offering marketplace plans. Well, then they discovered the cost. So then there was a huge course correction in that the pendulum swung back because they started really jacking up the price to offset the cost.
Mhm.
We're continuing to work this out. And this is why there's tends to be a lot of confusion when it comes to health insurance. And it's different from state to state what the expectations are.
Okay.
So again, the best answer to your question is talk to a real life
Yeah.
person because they're going to have the latest knowledge. That's why we constantly are having to do continuing education units and continuing have to be certified in each and every state because the rules are constantly changing on us. And it's our job to stay up on that so that as the rules change, we change to fit the needs. So, short answer, no, the penalty no longer exists, but you still have the question on your insurance, about insurance on your income tax.
Mhm.
Now,
Okay.
since you asked the question, let me clarify something else. The subsidized plans. One of the best things about the ACA, I think, are the subsidized plans. It offers plans for people that cannot afford health insurance. However, what that is in reality is that, and reason I encourage small businesses to work with a coach and a CPA who best knows your finances. That is actually a loan for the next year. So if your business becomes extremely successful and you move out of the subsidized range, when the tax time comes, then you have to pay back the subsidies at
Mhm.
the point when you started making too much money to qualify for the subsidies. So this is why I'm a big fan. Here's what I love about BNI. We surround ourselves with people that are experts in their fields because when we're doing business, we can't be an expert at everything. But knowing where that expert is, and it's usually in our BNI chapter, is the key to our success.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. I'll tell her.
Yep. All right. Well, appreciate you sharing that with us, Rod, and all the other information for folks who will be involved in open enrollment on November 1st and others that may want to take a look at it. We appreciate that. And thank you for joining us today. Good luck with open enrollment starting November 1.
Thanks, Mike. It's been a pleasure to be here. What a privilege.
And we'll see everybody next time on Triangle BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.